Hi, you are a business owner. You want money, preferably from a customer who has real budget, who spends more during recession, buys everything from paperclip to fighter jets, can legally print its own money, and does not ask for a discount because your cousin knows a guy. Congratulations, you have discovered the federal government, the biggest buyer of the world. But here is the problem. Every government purchase needs rule, documentation, compliance, and at least one PDF that ruins your afternoon. Welcome to government contracting. But here is the question. Why all the rules, forms, approvals and PDF? One reason, public money. If you spend your own money on a $900 chair, nobody cares. If the government spends public money on a $900 chair, suddenly everyone has questions. Who approved it? Why this chair? Why this vendor? Why does it look like a normal chair with the confidence issues? So the government needs proof before, during and after the purchase. That proof does not appear by magic. It's a process called procurement. Procurement is what happens when a buying became a group project with rules, forms, compliance, and one person named Kevin asking, does comma on page 12 matters? And yes, sometimes it does. A normal customer buys, government procures. Before the government can procure anything, someone inside the government has to raise their hand and say, we need this. Meet the end user, the person who actually needs the thing. They know the problem, they feel the pain, but they usually cannot buy the solution themselves. So the end user creates the need, but someone else controls the buy. That guy is contracting officer. The person legally allowed to spend the government money. Very important. Because in government contracting, needing something and buying something are two different sports. The end user says, my printer is dead. The contracting officer says, great. Please describe the death, justify the replacement, confirm the budget, and attach 3 documents no one will enjoy reading. Annoying? Yes. Necessary? Also yes. Because the contracting officers protect the buying process. And before the contracting officer starts the buying process, a government need has to become a requirement. Need is vague and unclear, but requirement explains what, how many, where, when, and what rules apply. For example, deliver 400 meals by 11 p.m. with drinks, label, delivery location, and enough details to prevent sandwich chaos. That is requirement. The requirement needs further refinement. For services, that became statement of work. Examples include cleaning the building, guarding the gate, repair the system, and feed those people. For products, that became specifications. And examples include size, dimension, model, material, and other things. Why it's important? Because if there are missing details, vendors become dangerously creative. Say meal, and someone will bring a granola bar with a juice and technically call it a meal. Say laptop, and someone will find a refurbished potato with a broken phone screen. Details prevent chaos. That is why we need statement of work and specifications. Now comes market research. This is the government checking if the thing they want actually exists in the universe. Or did someone write a specification so specific that can only be fulfilled by one vendor or one guy named Steve? Government conduct market research to figure out who sells it, what does it cost, can small business do it, is there competition? Market research keeps the government from buying in the dark. Sometimes government has a requirement, but still needs adult supervision of the market. So it posts RFI or source sort. Sources sort means, can anyone actually do this? RFI means, please tell us if the idea makes sense before we turn it into a 70-page problem. Important, this is not usually a bid, and you are not winning money today. You are basically telling the government, yes, we exist. Yes, this is possible. No, please do not require delivery by teleportation. Once the government understands who can do the work, it also has to label what kind of work it is. That is NAICS code. NAICS codes are how government sort work into business categories. For example, food services got one, janitorial got one, IT services got one, consultancy gets several, because consulting is not confusing enough already. The NAICS code helps decide what kind of vendor fits the opportunity and whether a business counts as a small business in that industry. So yes, code can affect competition. Federal contracting, where even the label has consequences. PSC means product and service code. NAICS codes tells about the industry. PSC codes tells about the thing. For example, food services versus meals, IT versus laptop, consultancy versus someone making 83 pages PowerPoint presentations with no mercy. PAC is important because it helps the government track what they buy. Because in government contracting, the thing even needs a number. Okay, now put the opportunity somewhere. SAM.gov is the main public doorway for the federal contractors. Opportunities, notices, awards show up here. Your business registration lives here. Your patients dies here. SAM is very important, but it is not the whole market. Some buys happens through DIBBS, some happens through Unison, some happens through FedConnect, and some happens through federal agencies. So SAM is not a universe, it is a big weird front door. Now identify the business. That means UEI and cage code. That helps federal government to recognize your business. Those are the entry points to the federal contracting world. You get those numbers by registering at SAM.gov because in government contracting, business is not fully real until it has a real name, address, registration, and at least one login that makes you question technology. UEI and cage does not win contract. They just let the system know you exist. And existing is generally the step one. Now your business has identity, but the government wants more. It wants label, small business, women-owned business, veteran-owned business, disadvantaged business, emotionally disadvantaged business after using SAM.gov. This is your small business profile at SPA.gov. It tells the government how your business is classified, what industries you work in, and whether you fit certain small business programs. It is not magic. It is not contract magnet. It is just your vendor label in the federal machine. When a need becomes a public request, it's called solicitation. It tells the vendor what the government wants, how it wants, when it wants, and how your offer will be judged. Think of it like a government dating site, but instead of like hiking, it says deliver 400 meals by 11 p.m., include napkins, comply with all clauses, and attach Excel pricing sheet. A solicitation is an opportunities rule book. Read it badly, you are not bidding, you are donating paperwork. Now meet the RFQ request for quotation. This is usually the simpler lane. The government knows what they need and they are simply asking for give your prices. Sounds easy, and sometimes it's easy until the code needs delivery term, product specification, compliance, representations, attachments, and one tiny instructions hidden on page 11 that will decide your future. Still, RFQ are generally code-based, so less storytelling, more pricing. Next come RFP, request for proposal. This is not just send prices. This is send price, plan, people, experience, schedule, risk control, and compliance. RFQ shows up when the government cares more about how you will perform the work, not just what it costs. A weak proposal says we can do it. A strong proposal says here is exactly how we will do it, why it will work, and why choosing us will not become tomorrow's problem. Then there is IFB, invitation for bid. This is when the government know exactly what they want. No brainstorming, no vision deck, no innovative solutions. The government says here are the specs, here is the deadline, please submit the bid. That's it. If your bid follows instruction, proves that you can perform the work, and has the lowest acceptable price, you may win. Information for bid is not a creativity contest. It's a price fight inside a rule book. Then we have micro purchases. Some government buys are small, less than $15,000, and all those buys are classified as micro purchases. The government buys, like please do not turn this $800 problem into a 90-day procurement drama. Maybe they need a tuner, a small repair, a few supplies, a local service. Something simple enough that nobody should need a strategy meeting, a local review, and a full procurement circus. So the government can buy those things in a faster way with the government purchase card. Still regulated, still documented, but with less drama. Micro purchases are where the government says, let's buy the thing before it becomes a project. Now, simplified acquisitions. This is the middle zone. Not tiny, not massive. The government still needs competition, responsible pricing, and documentation. But it should not need a full-blown proposal war. Think basic services, supplies, repairs, or products where the government knows what it wants and where the risk is manageable. Simplified acquisition exists because not every procurement needs to be treated like building a moon base. But still, the word simplified means a lot of emotional labor. Now we get full and open competition. This is when a government says, come one, come all. Very democratic, very fair, very stressful. Because now you are not just competing with 3 local vendors and a guy with printer. You may be competing with companies that have past performances, proposal writers, pricing terms, and someone whose only job is to read attachments like a machine with the health insurance. Full and open means the door is open, which is nice until you see who is coming. Then comes set-asides. It is when the government says, the competition is only for a certain kind of businesses. Small business, women-owned small business, veteran-owned small business. Basically, the government closes giant door and opens a small door. But the smaller door does not mean no competition. It just means that fewer people are allowed to be in the fight. Set aside is not a gift. It is a restricted competition. You still need the price, capability, and compliance, and the ability to deliver without becoming the reason a contracting officer updates their resume. Then comes certifications. These are the labels that the government use for certain kind of business program. 8A, women-owned small business, service disabled veteran-owned small business, hub zone. They matter because some opportunities are limited to certified businesses. But some businesses think certification equals to contract. It's not. Certification equals access. Access equals a chance. A chance equals competition. Competition means you still need to know what you are doing. So yes, get certified if it fits you. Just do not frame the document and wait for money to fall out of it. Then we have contract vehicles. Terrible name, useful concept. A contract vehicle is a pre-built way for a government to buy. Instead of starting from zero every time, the government can use an existing lane. Think of it like government saying, we have already built the road, let's drive on it. This matters because some opportunities never show up where the beginners are looking. They happen inside the vehicle. So if you are not on the road, you do not see the contracts. You are standing outside wondering where all the contracts went. However, there are many contract vehicles. One of them is GSA schedule, a long-term contract vehicle where approved vendors sell product and services to the government buyers. Basically, the government says, we check those vendors enough to let agencies shop from them faster. Good system, still not a magic, because having a GSA schedule does not mean you will get sales. It gives access, and access gives opportunity. Opportunity still requires someone choosing you instead of 400 other vendors also smiling politely on the same schedule. So GSA is not the finish line. It is the doorway with competition. Then comes indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts. Government is saying we are probably going to need this, but we are not emotionally ready to commit the exact numbers right now. The government may know it needs repairs, supplies, IT support, construction, or services, but the exact amount, unclear. The exact timing, unclear. So it creates an IDIQ. Later, it uses delivery order and task orders to complete the task. IDIQ is the government building the shopping lane before it knows every item on its shopping list. Next is blanket purchase agreement. This is the repeat buying lane. If the government keeps buying the same kind of thing over and over again, it can set up a BPA to make the future purchases easier. Not every order needs a full procurement ceremony. Sometimes the government needs same supplies, same maintenance, and same repairs. So a BPA says, we know we will need those things in the future. Let's stop reinventing the wheel and create a blanket purchase agreement. It reduces the friction for repeat buys. Now the market splits into platforms. eBuy, DIBBS, Unison, FedConnect, NECO. GSA eBuy handles certain requests for vendors only on GSA contracts. DIBBS is where DLA procure its needs. At Unison, you can submit your bid and you can have reverse bidding. FedConnect is another humble portal. And NECO is Navy's procurement portal. Each platform has its own rules, buyers, timing, and a special way of making beginner feel personally attacked. But the logic is the same. A buyer has a need, vendor responds, the system compares offer, and somewhere someone forgot their password. So no, government contracting is not just one website. It is a marketplace with many doors. Now comes competition. This is where federal contracting stopped being I sell things and became I sell things while other people also sell things. And everyone is trapped inside the same PDF. The government puts out a requirement, vendor responds, then the government compares who followed instructions, who can perform, who has a good price, who understands the work, who attached the right documents instead of uploading brochure_final_final to PDF. That is competition, not chaos. Controlled chaos with a deadline. Now the government check responsiveness. Responsive means your offer matches the rules of the solicitation. Right format, right deadline, right document, right signatures, right answer, right price sheet. This sounds like basic until you watch vendor lose because they forgot one form, missed one clause, uploaded the wrong file, or treated shall like a gentle suggestion. In normal life, missing one page is annoying. In government contracting, missing one page can turn your proposal into a decorative attachment. So responsiveness is simple. Follow the instructions or leave the game. Once you are responsive, you need to be responsible. Responsive is paperwork. Responsible is reality. Can you perform? Can you deliver? Can you finance it? Can you manage the suppliers? Can you manage the deadlines? Can you avoid becoming the reason everyone schedules an emergency meeting? That is responsibility. The government is not only choosing an offer, it is choosing risk. Then comes the evaluation criteria. This is the government telling you how the winners will be chosen. Not secretly, not spiritually, right there in the solicitation. Maybe it cares about lower prices, maybe technical approach, maybe past performance, maybe delivery speed, maybe all of them in an order that makes your head spin. Miss one detail and your proposal will be gone straight to the dustbin. The winning vendors write the proposal exactly as per evaluation criteria. Evaluation criteria are not decoration. They are the map to the award. Then we have lowest price technically acceptable. That means the government draws a line. Above the line, you are technically acceptable. Below the line, goodbye. Once you are above the line, the lowest price usually wins. So if the requirement is clear, LPTA can make sense. The government does not always need the best vendor in the universe. Sometimes it needs the cheapest vendor who can do the job without creating a sequel called Procurement Disaster 2.0. LPTA is not about being amazing. It is about being acceptable and priced to win. Now comes Best Value Awards. LPTA says meet the bar, lowest price win. Best Value says price matters, but do not ruin everything. The government may compare technical approach, experience, past performance, delivery, management, and risk. One vendor may be cheaper, another may be stronger, another may understand the work better, another may have done it before without setting the contracting officer inbox at fire. Best Value let the government choose the offer that gives the best overall trade. Not the cheapest, the best overall option. Now comes pricing. Price too high, you lose. Price too low, you suffer. This is the game. A real price includes cost, delivery, labor, admin fees, compliance, financing, risk, and profit. Not hopes, not vibes, not we will figure out later after award. After award is where bad pricing becomes a hostage situation. Pricing is the moment your spreadsheet tells the truth, and sometimes the truth says, do not bid on this. One component of pricing is supplier's quote. If you are a reseller, your supplier is the floor under the bid. No supplier quote, no floor, just falling through a spreadsheet. A real quote confirms price, availability, shipping, lead time, warranty, and other information. Not I saw it on a website, not my guy said yes, not Amazon had it yesterday. Because when the government awards you the contract, it does not care whether your supplier vanished into the mist. You promised delivery, so now you deliver. Supplier quotes are how you make sure your bid is not just optimism with the unit price.